traffic control and a medevac pilot just moments after impact.
Where's the crash? It's on runway 23, right at threshold, right at this intersection there, 23 and 15 left. On life flight 1 medevac, just so you are, there's people outside walking around the aircraft there.
USA. USA. Ah.
When the plane came to rest, buckled passengers found themselves hanging upside down. At least one wing of the aircraft torn off.
Unironically, this is why you have to keep your seatbelt buckled during the landing. Nobody does that. Or, well, a lot of people do that, but some people think it's like, oh, we're landing, who cares? This is why. You want to get thrown through the plane like that? Absolutely not. You just want to hang upside down, like Spider-Man.
Off. The plane on fire.
It was mass chaos. I was upside down. The lady next to me was upside down. We kind of let ourselves go and fell to hit the ceiling, which is surreal feeling. And then everybody was just like, get out, get out, get out.
We didn't really know anything was the matter, or at least I didn't, until like the second we hit the ground. There was no like real indication of anything. And then, yeah, we hit the ground and we were sideways and then we were upside down, hanging like bats.
Absolutely incredible. Let's bring in CNN transportation.
How would you riz up your co-passengers in this case? As co-passenger, you're on every man for themselves. As the pilot, do you think the intercom system was still functional at the end? Do you think they could have hit with the classic, like, and it's a beautiful -7 degrees centigrade here in sunny Toronto, and it's been a pleasure to fly with you all today? Like, do you think... Because they had to be, like, waiting there for a bit before the rescue crews came and busted the doors open, so I figure they could have done a bit, you know?
Analyst Mary Schiava. Mary, based on the footage and what we know so far, have you...
Did I say centigrade? I meant Celsius.
Able to draw any initial conclusions about what could have happened here?
Well, yes, the footage and then also the air traffic control communications and the weather alerts, METARs, meteorological warnings that are specific to the airport. And so the plane was coming in.
They're the same, but nobody says centigrade, right? Like only nerds would? A cool pilot would say Celsius.
They did have warnings that the winds were 23 to 37 knots, which is pretty tough on a Canadair regional jet 900. Then they had crosswind warnings of maybe 30 to 40 knots, which, depending upon the conditions at the airport,
that guy does good airplane crash/action analysis. I'll keep it as reference. Okay, Andre24, I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, for the future. It seems like we're entering a new era of like airline disasters, like aviation catastrophes. So yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes. I don't know, man. I mean, we'll see how things hold up, but it does, like, eventually you do kind of reach a breaking point, right? Like with Boeing, and they're, you know, effectively operating like private equity through their like acquisition and merger with that other airline company. Since then, they've been on, like, you know, finance oriented. Cuts to NOAA, gonna make it harder to get like accurate weather reports. FAA cuts, just all together, man. It's going to be like this for every aspect of our country now. Yeah, like crumbling infrastructure, bridge collapses, like everything is going to fall apart over time. DEI kept planes in the sky. Okay, it's like, you say it as a joke, but like unironically, yes. DEI initiatives are part of the corporate and public sector culture that do prioritize excellence over profits. Because the, like, default mode of behavior for any private company is like, everyone, make as much money as possible as quickly as possible. Nothing matters besides that. They don't care about competency. They care about like cost cutting for the benefit of their shareholders, you know? The DEI initiatives, at least to some extent, indicate an interest in building excellency outside of like that immediate, you know, grab. Now, how often is it done sincerely? Not very often, which is why I'm saying we need to get woker than ever before.
Exceed actually the recommended performance for the Canadair regional jet. They were coming down. There was some variation according to publicly available radar and the ground speed and the sink rate. So that means they were getting gusts of wind as they were coming down, and they smacked down pretty hard according to the eyewitness or the ear witness reports and those people on the plane.
DEI is needed because they were not hiring based on merit. Yep, it's like, dude, it's literally the Hair Star quote from the, you know, Garth Ennis books, The Preacher, right? If you're in any profession, whether you're at the hospital or you're on a plane or whatever, and the person in charge is a black woman, your ass is safe because that motherfucker had to work 10 times as hard as any of the white guys in that field to get to where she did. The delusional right-wing bullshit about like, oh, all these black people are just getting made pilots and captains and blah, blah, blah for nothing. That's just because of what? It's literally like a fantasy. A delusional racist fantasy concocted by mediocre white boys who are upset that their, children didn't immediately get the highest position possible in everything they ever tried at, despite themselves sucking.
Right at the end of the threshold of the runway. And at that point, what looks like might have happened from very grainy videotape from other cameras is the landing gear, the rear gear, might have snapped off at that point, along with the right wing, which, with the left wing still on the plane, lifts the plane, causing a plane to roll and cartwheel. That's my best guess. It's only a guess at this point, and the investigators will have it real soon because they have the pilots to talk to. And of course,
wild seeing blonde white women labeled as DEI hires. Actually, I'm pretty sure that historically white women have been the biggest beneficiaries of DEI initiatives. Obviously, women face a lot of sexism in the workplace and continue to today. But like, if you're a super, conservative boys club kind of company, and the government is like, okay, we need like some effort on your part to not keep hiring identical looking white boys, who's the first people you go for, Nigerian immigrants with one leg who are transgender? No, you go for white women.
Of course, the flight data recorders.
Yeah, a true miracle that there are so many people that they can interview about what happened because everyone survived this crash landing. CNN safety analyst David Susi drew some similar observations about what may have caused the crash, including some of those questions about the landing gear. I'd like to play that and get your response.
There are a lot of clues that you can see right away. The things I'd be looking at right away are, was it a hard landing? We look at the fact that the landing gear aren't on the aircraft. So are they there, or did they get torn off in the accident, or perhaps they weren't even down at the time?
He does kind of
there's
look
a
like
lot
AI,
of questions,
a little bit.
But I think a quick visual of the aircraft on site would give them a lot of clues as to where this goes.
Mary, you mentioned the fact that you believe that the landing gear.
I don't think people realize that, like, before, at the very least, the 1960s, people, like, if your business was entirely white men, there was basically no quality guarantee to their performance or meritocracy or whatever. Everything was a boys club. Like, literally, every business, oh, the manager, he was the son of the founder, Every manager, oh, well, he's related to the son of the founder. Every guy, all the time, every place. It's like it's nepotism from the ground up. There were no this used to be something that we associated with corruption, right? This like Tammany Hall bullshit where people would build like miniature empires of business where like every guy was related to them. And so we literally used to like go after Italians and Irish because they did this really aggressively, because they wanted to protect their own, because they were discriminated against. Like, this happened, this like every persecuted community, we get this, it happened with Irish and Italian, now we consider them white. It happened with Jews. Now, depending on who you ask, we consider them white. It really depends on how much they like Elon Musk. Elon Musk himself is the product of nepotism. Like, the idea of you enter a business or you engage with a bureaucracy and the people you talk to are genuinely, like, meritocratically the best people for the job, that has never been more true than today. I guess up until, like, a month ago or whatever. Like, people do understand that the whole small business, the son is going to take over mantra is the opposite of meritocracy, right? It's literally nepotism.
You're snapped off upon impact, but how could investigators prevent something like this from happening in the future? Is it a matter of de-icing the plane, clearing the runway, or simply not flying or landing in conditions as dangerous as the ones you were describing?
Well, every plane has its own limits, and this one has more crosswind limits than, for example, a larger plane. But Toronto Pearson, that's a great airport, operates around the year, around the clock, and they do have all the services to clear the runway. But you can see even in the videotape there was tremendous blowing winds, blowing snow, etc. And that reduces the crosswind limits of the Canadair regional jet and all jets tremendously. So, for example, you might have a 37 crosswind allowance for that aircraft, but if the runway is not clear, if it's limits of that air.
18 injured in that crash landing in Toronto that we were just discussing. Do you see this as a coincidence? Do you see this in perhaps a lapse in safety, in personnel? Are there any dots that we can connect here?
Well, with the last two, weather certainly played an important role, both in Alaska and in this crash. And it's, the tough winter conditions, accidents can increase. And it depends on the operational limits of your aircraft and sometimes just freak winds and other issues. But for the other two, there's no commonality. And what we always looked for, when I was with the Department of Transportation, you look for patterns, you look for trends, you look for data that you can connect.
I'm not really like a spiritual guy. In fact, I'm pretty militantly anti-mysticism. I will say, however, that I do believe, and I think you can scientifically back this up. It just kind of takes a little bit of hand waving and maybe absinthe. But I do believe a little bit in like the vibe of confidence. Competence, not confidence, though I guess they kind of overlap in this case, where as the world gets wackier, more shit like this happens, and the more attention stuff like this gets, which it's getting because the world is getting wackier, the more likely it is to happen because consumer trust goes down, people get more paranoid, and you see like more and more. It's almost like it doesn't even matter how many crashes there are. What matters is the narrative around those crashes and the extent to which they affect public confidence, which then of course drives down like aviation attendance, which then drives up that drives down ticket costs, which drives down the profit margins for the airlines, which already operate in really thin margins, which means that in order to continue to make money, they have to either crank those ticket prices up, which they know will mean even fewer people will fly, or they have to cut the margins even more, which means that they're going to lose even more talented people. And it's like, you understand what I mean? So many of these industries aren't built on stable foundations, They're not like a train. Not to like train post or whatever, but it's like trains are really sturdy, not just like physically, but also socioeconomically. They're really like civically stable as like an institution. To keep trains running, I'm not saying it's easy. Everything's difficult, but you get me. And to a lesser extent, cars, obviously not so much, but the highly like individualized nature of our highway network, like the fact that everyone's on their own driving along. You don't have as much institutional oversight because it's not as necessary. But for something like planes...
Now, of course, in the Washington, D.C. flight, they had some very consistent data, and that is they had, I think, probably 100 or so alerts that the helicopter traffic was causing conflict, loss of airspace separation with commercial air traffic. So that's a very important trend that somebody should have
Air travel is psychotically consistent. This isn't snowballing consumer distrust. This is literally divine intervention. But the processes that I'm talking about have been happening for a long time, right? Like, at the end of the day, yeah, air travel is still statistically the safest way to cross any distance, but a lot of this is vibes-based in the sense that it's based on consumer trust, And they have been cutting the margins down quite a bit. Even with trains, they've been doing this. It used to be every train had 3 guys on it, then 2, the conductor and the engineer, and now like Norfolk Southern's been, have they succeeded yet in trying to make it so only 1 guy is on a train at a time? Yeah, they want 1. Do they have 1 now? Do they succeed? They're gonna find a way to make it 0. Half a guy a train. They're gonna have 1 kid per train, like a 10-year-old with a conductor's hat. It's just profit seeking. Like on every level, it's profit seeking. And with the airlines already operate at such thin margins, Like, we assume that the airlines are making money hand over fist. And don't get me wrong, the shareholders are because of the investment bubble above it. But the actual business runs on desperate margins. Tickets are so cheap. They're so inexpensive. Don't trains derail all the time? Not really, no. I mean, a lot of the derailing stats are minor derails that are like pretty easily fixed. In terms of like big train disasters, also keep in mind for how little we invest in our trains, you've got to kind of take like a investment amount relative to miles traveled, relative to cargo held or whatever. You can do the math. I'm not going to do the math. You can do the math. I don't know. You understand what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, this stream derails a lot. I'll tell you that much. They've got a ton of revenues, but also a ton of costs. Yeah, I mean, it's not sensible the way airlines are run now. I mean, we all know how badly pilots and stewards and stewardesses are treated, right? Like, they fight for unionization. They're given horrible hours, horrible conditions, horrible benefits, horrible pay. They're run ragged. It's not good. Dope uniforms, though? Yeah, they used to be better.
Recognized long before this fatal crash in Washington, D.C. With the others, there's no commonality. So you're always looking for if there's a trend out there that the safety investigators and the safety regulators haven't picked up. And so obviously they're going to be wanting to look at weather performance. But in D.C., I think they're going to want to separate the military helicopters forever from the passenger service aircraft at DCA.
That's such important context. We are so appreciative for your expertise, Mary Schiavo. Thank you so much for joining us. Retired American
Wait, really? I thought pilots were treated like mini gods. I mean, they're like respected, but they have a really difficult job. And between that, like cuts at the FAA on so many levels, it's just a business that's being run down to the ground, like bled out to the thinnest possible margin, you know? Remember the ATC people who are actively saying stuff like, I know I'm going to make a mistake, it's just a matter of how bad it is when talking about being overworked and understaffed? Yeah, literally. Like on every level. And all of it is, I'm really sorry, guys, all of it's capitalism. It is. All of it is a fundamentally functional business model being run ragged so that the profits can increase year over year, because that's what makes the shareholders more money. It's not about making more money for the business, at least not in a first principle kind of way.
Airlines pilot Les Abend joins us. Les,
He looks like a
pilots
pilot.
train for moments like these, hoping that you never encounter them. But based on what you've seen, have you drawn any conclusions about what caused this accident?
Well, I have, Kayla, to some extent. Maybe I'll give you a little better perspective on what pilots would have been thinking just prior to this landing. I would have known that this wind was gusty. We would have added a factor we call gust factor to it. Hopefully that's what they did. It's an easy mathematical formula that just adds a little bit of extra airspeed to the speed that we're at over the threshold. And that would have been important. And the reason I bring that up is because if they didn't add that speed in the gusty wind condition, it's possible conditions.
Stand something like this.
We already know it crashed because there wasn't enough wokeness in the world. Pretty sure ATC workers are public employees, not private. Yeah, but it's part of the process that I'm talking about. The government does the same damn thing. Also, not to say there shouldn't be federal oversight, but the fact that the federal government is picking up the tab for all that work is kind of crazy to me. You know? Like all of these airports, you know, the federal government needs to be putting out the like pay and salaries for the basic infrastructure for making sure that these planes don't crash into each other. Like once again, it's just the government subsidizing that private work. That's true, Esther Mail. They will never escape the cycle of samsara. Why do other capitalist governments not work like this though? Well, they do to an extent, but America is kind of like the hotbed for it because we're literally the global epicenter for private capital. There are other countries that also operate like this, and they've also been hollowed out by private capital, right? Russia, Saudi Arabia, you know, it really just depends on how, it's like a pushback, right? There's a dialectical engagement between, you have like the public will, the democratic will, you have like usually fronted by populism, like anti-corporate populism. You have an interest in the you know, social spending, public safety nets, that kind of stuff, and it gets pushed back by the acquisition of private capital. This battle's being waged all over the place all the time. Look at what's happening to the NHS in Britain, right? They're hollowing out the NHS right now. Like, for decades and decades, the National Health Service has been a pride and joy of the British people, and it is literally getting, like, gutted and destroyed by, yeah, it's happening in Sweden. It's happened all over the place. So I wouldn't say it's only in America. I would just say we're ahead of the curve, maybe alongside Saudi Arabia, Russia, a few other countries, you know? But I don't think there's anything, like, naturally exceptional about the extent to which Americans are getting raped to death by private capital. I would say private capital, kind of a little redundant. I would just say we're ahead of the curve because we are the epicenter of global capitalism. We are like we're the guys, you know? We're the guys. Not trying to spam, please read my previous mess about, I mean, they did it in Russia first. I would argue that shock doctrine in what happened in Russia was the Western capitalist hegemon's attempt at learning what you could get away with in a country. Like Reagan was the 80s, right? And then right after Reagan, the Soviet Union fell, and we get, the split. And you get the shock therapy. You get the all these countries are ruthlessly like carved up, and all their public assets are turned into private assets owned by a few oligarchs. And that was overseen by a bunch of liberal capitalist think tanks and economists and so on, Soros types, basically, over here in the West. And I think that to a large extent, we were trying to see, like, what can we get away with, Like, how much can you carve a superpower up until only, like, 5 people own everything? It's probably the reason why the Trump administration's on much better terms with Russia than China, because China still does have a lot of, like, state pushback against capital acquisition. Not enough for my taste, personally, but China is willing to bend and break the capital class a little bit to keep them in the national interest. Was it? I've done more reading. It seems like the Russian oligarchs attempted to do what they thought capitalism was, which was totally misinformed. But, well, they were right, though. Capitalism is whatever you want to do. No, Masagui, the idea that the oligarchs carved up public assets in an effort to, like, consolidate all that wealth in their private holdings, and that was facilitated by Western economists, that's just indisputable. Also, you can't say, like, in Albania the economy crashed because everyone thought Ponzi schemes were infinite money. We're doing that here in America. The president and the first lady both dropped meme coin rug pulls before they even took office, It's just how it is. It's just infinite rape for, like, 99.99% of people. And, the remaining 0.01% get everything. Russians could fuck up just about any form of government, though. Don't make it an essentialist national thing. That's not what it's about. It could have gone a lot of different ways. Russian oligarchs were homegrown? Yeah, I never said otherwise. Of course. I didn't say a bunch of Western businessmen went and carved up the Soviet Union and then took that shit for themselves. I'm saying they helped facilitate, encourage, and incentivize the existing, usually former, like, Soviet, obviously Putin worked with the KGB, former Soviet officials, to take all it themselves. It's not really germane to my point. It doesn't really, like, undermine the argument that I'm trying to make here. It's going to happen everywhere in the world until something gives. It's already happening. Is it time we congratulate Putin for destroying the U.S. with women? You're not listening to me. It's about capitalism. What happened in Russia is just like a particularly aggressive outcropping of this system that was facilitated and developed by Western interests. But it's been happening everywhere. It feels like the 20s were the closest we got to socialism. Well, it was like that in the 1920s too. So, the cycle continues. We're going to get a new Soviet Union somewhere in the world sometime soon. It always is about capitalism. You could say that every segment. Well, pardon me for being a good Marxist, okay? Pardon me for being a well-studied practitioner of my ideology, okay? Sue me.